Okay. Now, for those of you just joining, we're kind of waiting for some more people to join. We're ready to go. And we'll be starting shortly. Where are those settings? Is it down? Or you've got them? Oh, you know what? It's up in that green thing up there, I think, isn't it? Yeah. No, 37. General, maybe? I think we'll probably just kind of stop sharing every now and then to see if anybody's joined. So again, thank you everybody for joining. You can see we've got quite a crew today and we've got quite a bit of information to get through. So what we're kind of fiddling with here is we're trying to share screen and watch the weight room. So every now and then we'll probably stop sharing the screen and check for people that need to join. So we'll be doing that. Also, as a matter of kind of just housekeeping, since we do have such a large group today, what we're going to be doing is covering a broad range of information. So some of this might be stuff if you're already doing sales taxes, you might already know. We've got people that don't even have a business yet through people who are, you know, have some big businesses under their belts. So the information is going to be fairly broad. If you do have questions, put them in chat. We'll try to monitor the chat. We don't want it to get too noisy so that we miss questions, but if you wouldn't mind just kind of keeping the questions in chat to general questions. If you have a specific question or if you have a bunch of questions, we do have a form that we can, and Mary, if you wouldn't mind finding that link and pasting it in the chat. There's a Google form where you can post all of your questions. And so if you want to go to this form and then just leave it up as we go through the presentation and just type your questions in there. And then at the end, you can hit submit and I will get back to you via email if we don't cover it during the course. Anybody has questions about that? So I think with that being said, what was one that just joined?
Recording in progress.
Yes, we are. All righty, everybody. Again, thank you for joining us. If you're here today, you know the fun of sales chats. So to introduce myself, my name is Teresa Scheel. I'm the owner of Inukshuk Online. I'm an accountant here in Denver, and I do specialize in Colorado sales taxes. I have many clients in different industries, from online retail stores with Shopify sites to huge multi-location bookstores. So I've seen kind of the breadth of the problems people have, but I want to just kind of state right now, I don't know every statute for every city, for every industry. So when we talk about compliance, the compliance is going to be, you know, more about where can you find answers for your particular questions. When we get into, you know, what sales taxes are and how to find correct jurisdiction codes, etc. I'm sorry, I did not turn off my tent. Okay. we'll dig into that, but again, kind of on a broader basis. So that being said, we're gonna dig in here. And let me make sure I am sharing the right screen. All right, so again, today we're going to go over Colorado sales taxes, primarily the collection and remittance. And this is kind of how I feel everybody will feel by the end of the day. Is we're going to hit you with about fire hose full of information. So on the agenda, we're going to go over what are sales taxes, compliance with sales tax regulations, collecting sales taxes from customers, filing and remitting those taxes. Going to kind of conclude with some resources and stuff for you. And then again, any questions. But if you do have questions along the way, you can throw the general questions in the chat and we'll see if we can't cover those as we go. And the big kind of special questions that you might have regarding your business, go ahead and put those in that form. Mary, did you have a chance to, I can't see the chat. So did you have a chance
Yes.
to put in the link? Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
All righty. So again, that's me and sales taxes. If you don't know, we all pay sales taxes. I don't know, once you get involved and you become a sales tax nerd like me, I check my sales taxes wherever I go. And once you learn how to look up what the rates should be and what you should be paying at that store you just bought $5,000 worth of furniture at and how much tax you're paying, you will find it very interesting. So basically a sales tax is just a form of a consumption tax, meaning a use tax, collects when somebody spends money on a product or service. Now we say product or service because typically it's a tangible product. Most times services are not taxable. However, at sometimes they are. Secondly, who pays the sales tax? So if you have a manufacturer that makes widgets over here, he maybe makes food coloring, or he makes flour or dairy products or something, and you make cookies. You're probably not going to talk to that manufacturer directly. There's going to be people in the middle of the process. So throughout the process, the manufacturer is going to buy his goods tax-free. The reseller, if there is one, is probably going to buy those tax-free, and you'll hear me saying maybe and probably a lot because I can't say anything. There's always an exception to the rule. Let's say it that way. The retailer is typically the one who collects the taxes from the consumer. So it becomes your responsibility then to look at your products, your services, the jurisdictions you're going to be selling into, and do you have a liability to collect sales tax there? And why did all this occur? We are crediting the Wayfair versus South Dakota decision. This happened in 2018. It came up as a class action suit with, I believe it was Amazon and South Dakota, or no, I'm sorry, Wayfair, silly me, in South Dakota. They determined that, you know, all these interstate transactions that were going on, who's getting some sales tax off of those? So the states decided they would get involved, and there became some general nexus guidelines for all of the states. Most of them follow them, and they can have a hybrid of these conditions. But typically, if you have 200 transactions and or $100,000 in gross sales in an interstate transaction, then you may be liable for taxes paid to another state. So if you are somebody selling on Etsy, you're probably not going to qualify for this, but if you're selling big ticket items, you could hit that threshold really quick. So again, it's up to you to make sure that whatever you're selling, that you are complying with the interstate implications of this. Now, intrastate, meaning within Colorado, what did that do to Colorado? What it did for us was it converted us from a origination sourcing state to a destination sourcing state. And what that means, whoops. What that means is instead of collecting tax at your store or where you manufactured it, you typically would collect it at your store. Now, what you have to do is you have to calculate based on the ship to or delivery address. You have to figure out what rate you should be charging, what jurisdictions those apply to, and then figure out how to remit to those jurisdictions. So kind of a definition for jurisdiction, because this term is used interchangeably. The highest level within Colorado is at, obviously the state. The state gets 2.9% of every sales tax collected. Then the counties within Colorado and the cities within Colorado are also considered jurisdictions, including home rule cities. And we'll go over what a home rule city here is in a minute. These jurisdictions may also have special sales taxes. You may see on those receipts that I know you're going to start checking because you're going to find it really interesting. There's RTD taxes, there's mass transit taxes. If you look on a receipt and you see a CD tax, that's a cultural district, and those are things that fund like DCPA and other cultural events. So sales taxes is pervasive everywhere. So just as an example of the differing jurisdictions that you could have on a single sale, obviously the state of Colorado is going to be involved in every sale, taxable sale that you have. If you're selling within the city of Aurora spans 3 different counties, Douglas, Arapahoe, and Adams, which all have different tax rates. Then on top of that, you've got your RTD and your CD. So depending on what jurisdiction you're selling into, your rate may be different, and you need to know that. So let's talk about home rule cities for a little minute. So a home rule city is it's a statutory city within the state that constitutionally they are allowed to collect their own taxes. The state doesn't get involved with it at all. However, those home rule cities probably span, and I'm going to go back to the Aurora one, maybe. Aurora is a home rule city. So when you make a sale into Aurora, you need to be paying the city of Aurora separately from the county, separately from the state of Colorado. And we'll show in a little bit just where you pay what, but it's not as hard as it sounds, although it can be difficult. I wish I could ask questions. You know what? I'm just going to stop here and ask questions because I've kind of thrown a lot of information. So I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute. Let's check and see if anybody else is in. Let's see.
Teresa, it looks to me like there's the people want to be admitted are popping up on the shared screen, and I'm able to watch for that and admit them as we go along.
Oh, you are? Oh, good. Okay, perfect. So we have no questions yet? Okay, perfect. So again, this is probably some basic stuff that you may or may not already be familiar with. So hopefully we'll get into the meat of it soon. What we're going to do. Oh, Juan has a question. Yes.
Destination sourcing. This triggered nexus.
Destination sourcing. What triggers the nexus is if you have a sale to a jurisdiction. So that would be considered a financial nexus. So if you have a store in Thornton, or if you make some kind of things that you're, maybe you have a studio or something in Thornton, and you ship it to Boulder, you now have a sales financial nexus with Boulder. So you'll have to pay Boulder. So that's destination sourcing. So as a retailer, you might have one little store in downtown Denver, but you ship to 100 different jurisdictions. So you need to know what those are. And I'll show you how to figure that out here in a second.
That question actually.
Oh. Look at you, Juan. You want to facilitate with me? You're doing awesome. Yeah. You're doing good. Well, what do they say? See one, do one, teach one? Yeah.
Follow-up question was, is that the same if out of state? Just go out of.
Well, it's gonna depend on, that's a great question. So right now, what we're talking about is sales from Colorado within Colorado. If you have other, well, I don't want to get too deep down the rabbit hole because interstate, it gets a little messy and complex at times, but I'm trying to think of an example. An example of somebody that might be out of state, and this may or may not answer your question, is if you happen to be an Amazon seller and you are using their, I can't remember what they call the program, but it's some kind of fulfillment thing where you produce products and you store them in warehouses around the country. If maybe you're in Florida, but you are using a warehouse in Colorado and you ship to somebody in Colorado, yes, now you do have financial nexus. Is that clear as much? Okay, so now that we've kind of described what a jurisdiction is, we'll talk a little bit about compliance with the jurisdiction. So again, I don't think there is anybody that could ever know every statute for every home rule city or state paid city. So it's best to monitor as you are expanding your business or setting up your business. If you're adding new products, if you're adding new services, to check within the jurisdiction that at least your physical location is in. So if you're in Thornton, for instance, you want to check with Thornton first because that's going to be your first point of nexus. Then as you start selling to different areas, you might just, discover that you're selling to Aurora and Denver and Boulder and Fort Collins and Greeley. You're going to need to know what those rules are. And we'll talk about here in a second, where to find those rules. But it is your responsibility to kind of understand it. Now, the good news is some of the larger considerations are common. For instance, if you, the filing dates are going to be similar and some other regulations will be common. But there's some legislation coming up trying to get some home rule cities a little more similar to each other. So the next question we're going to ask is, do you need a sales tax license or an account within a jurisdiction? So the answer for the state is yes. If you're a retailer, you need to have a sales tax license. And you can do this in Revenue Online, which is at this, and you will get a copy of this presentation, and these are links. So you can just link to it right from the presentation, or you can go to tax.colorado.gov, which is one of our resources. There's everything about sales taxes, other business taxes, et cetera. And chances are you've probably already gone there. If you have a business, if you have payroll, you're already familiar with Revenue Online. But yes, you need to have a sales tax license within Colorado to collect taxes. And in home rule cities, you may need to have an account there. And when we get to the filing part of this, I will discuss in a little more detail why I'm saying may, because if you use the SUT system, you might be able to get away without having an account for a little bit. But the answer to this question is yes. And you're going to start by going to Revenue Online and getting a Colorado sales tax license. Once you do receive your sales tax license, and it is a piece of paper, you'll get a cute little sales tax license. If you need to post it, you need to post that in your brick and mortar store, wherever you're doing your sales. You'll manage your account through Revenue Online primarily. Oops, I keep clicking, my apologies. And in Revenue Online is where you're going to be adding what are called non-physical locations. So when we talk about sales into other jurisdictions, let's say, for instance, you've been in business for a year and you've been shipping, and it's, pretty much locations near you, and all of a sudden you have a sale into a new city. Maybe all of a sudden you are going to sell something in Pueblo, even if it's a minor sale. You need to find out what the regulations are, make sure you're in compliance with that, and then get an account, or like I say, if you're using such, you may not need to get an account for a couple months maybe, but you'll have to check to see if you need an account with that home rule city. Okay, so again, with the origination sourcing, I don't know, I feel like this slide's out of order, so my apologies. But the important thing on this slide is that for each sale or order that you ship or deliver, if you're not selling it within your store, you need to know what that jurisdiction code is. So we'll go into that a little more in detail here shortly. I keep saying that, but this is probably the most important part. Darn it, I did it again. Of your sales process. And we're going to be looking at what kind of business you are and what you're using for your accounting or your point of sale system, how to make this easier too. So just keep that in the back of your mind, is that for each sale, you need to know where that buyer is receiving the product or service. All right, so what do you find what the right Colorado jurisdiction is? And we're going to take a minute here, and if you are, obviously everybody's on their computer, if you want to open up a browser window and go to colorado.ttr.services, it will pop up a website. You can put an address in there and it will bring up, and I think I'll do it here. I'm going to stop sharing really quick. And I'm going to open up a browser. Oops. Sorry, I would have been a little more finesse with this. Where is that? There we go. You'll get a screen that looks like this eventually. My mouse is so laggy. Well, my apologies. I hope that you are going to this website and you're not getting just the white screen, but Colorado TTR.services is the hold harmless database for Colorado jurisdictions. It's the only place that you can find online what address represents what jurisdiction code. So I'm going to go back to the presentation here because that's not helpful at all. My apologies again. I do not have the right screen up. There we go. Okay. I muted myself somehow. Okie doke. All right. So again, this is a one-time lookup. You can only look up one address at a time on this website, which is a big downfall for anybody that's using a point of sale, or you have multiple sales that you need to look up at a time. It is quick, but again, it's just a query in return. You can export the information from it. It gives you the jurisdiction code, which is a 6-digit number, as well as the rate and the broken down jurisdiction rates. So, but you do have to write that somewhere or export it and or type it into something. So it's not very helpful, but it does give you the correct information. Now you might want to go ahead and look up your physical location for your place of business. So that's going to be your primary physical location. And when you get your Colorado sales tax license, that will be in your account as your primary physical location. Everything else you register for is going to be considered a non-physical location. Okay, so next, you know all these different jurisdictions. Maybe this month you've got 5 new jurisdiction codes that you need to go and find out what you're liable for. So I wish I had more help in this, but primarily I would go to the Colorado DR 1002 form, which is the state of Colorado's form that kind of, I wish I could share it, darn it. My apologies. It's is- okay, so for the questions about recording, the Alliance Center, which is who is hosting us today, they are recording the session and they're putting together a library of different workshops. And so it probably won't be immediately available, but I assume that it will be available. And I will keep on top of that. And Jenny also has your information, so she'll be able to send you information on that. Thank you. Okay. So fortunately or unfortunately, your Dear 1002 form is going to be your best source of information regarding jurisdictions, their rates, their exemptions, their deductions for home rule cities. It also does give you a section of contact information for home rule cities. So that's your best place to start. Second place is to just go ahead and try to find the city's website, because they typically have their statutes posted online. There should be a number you can call, an email that you can contact them through. Most jurisdictions require at least a 2 weeks notice to get an account for you. It's not an on-the-spot kind of application. Some of them do require more time than others. Some home rule cities also use paper still. So kind of plan ahead, do your sales tax reports early. Okay, so again, when you are adding new products or services, you want to check to see if those are taxable, and if they're taxable in your jurisdictions you have nexus with. And you also need to check to see if you have clients that may be exempt. So for instance, in Colorado, government entities are tax exempt. Nonprofit charities are tax exempt. So you may also have some clients that you do not have to collect taxes or remit taxes for. Another piece of this is not only are they taxable, but are they deductible? So for instance, in the state of Colorado, freight and delivery is not taxable as long as you have it separately stated on your invoice. If it is included with your price, for instance, if you are a seller that sells on Etsy, for example, Etsy tries to promote in offering free shipping by including it into your price point. So if you do prices like that, if you are setting up your prices to include shipping and delivery so that you can advertise it as free, you will have to collect taxes on those. So again, different jurisdictions can have different rules around that. So it's important to understand where you may be liable. All right. This is the last question, I believe, for compliance is, are there sales tax audits? And yes, they are. I have a client. She has a brick and mortar store. She had been in business 6 months and she got an face-to-face in-person auditor come to her place of business. So it's best to have your documentation done, and we'll go over that here in a little bit. And be prepared. Make sure you have all of your ducks in a row. Okay, so we're moving on to collecting tax from customers. I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute to see if anybody has. I don't see any more questions in chat. Do you have any more?
So I do have a question, Teresa.
Okay,
So because I'm just trying to wrap my head around the
Yeah.
concept, because a little bit earlier you had said that Colorado, like it's now, this is like the new thing. So like before you didn't do this and it was only like in Colorado, but now even if you ship to someone or ship somewhere else, then you'd have to collect this tax or however. So like if you have a platform like Shopify or like Etsy, when we set up those platforms and like they ask you about the tax and different things like that,
Uh-huh.
for those systems, how they're calculating the tax for you, is that something like we would need to look on the platform to see how they deal with different tax jurisdictions, or will those systems just calculate it just naturally based on like what your state is, if that makes sense?
No, that makes perfect sense, and it's a great question, and we're gonna dive into that in a little bit, but
Oh, I see.
to quickly, briefly answer your question, yes, those platforms do calculate. It's very important that you configure your taxes correctly. I know a lot of the sales pitch on those platforms is, don't worry, we do the tax for you. Well, they do, and they for the most part do it well. I have found that most of these platforms are, you know, 95 to 98% correct.
Okay.
So to answer your question, yeah, you can trust the Shopify's and the Etsy's, but we will talk about that a little bit here shortly, and we will also dig into the kind of reports they provide and how you need to kind of transform that data so you can file correctly.
Okay. And
Okay.
then lastly here, like for, because shipping is so I don't know, it's kind of hard like topic, because like some people, like when you're kind of intermittent, like say for instance you're like kind of on the cusp of Denver but you're like in Aurora.
Right.
So when it comes to like the shipping for taxes, would they just tax you for Denver or Aurora based on that client or that customer's address?
Well, it's okay. When you say they, are you talking about the platform like a Shopify?
So yeah, like because
Okay.
because it'll go based on their shipping address, right? Is based on how this this tax will need to be calculated.
Yes, but there are also other configuration items that you need to make sure within those platforms are set up correctly. So we'll go over those.
Over. Okay.
Yeah, in a little bit, but you're absolutely right. They use that ship to address just like you would if you were manually collecting it or calculating it even. So yeah, you can, for the most, I don't want to say for the most part, you can trust them, and that would go to even the NetSuites or the, you know, Avalaras or whatever. They obviously don't use this one-time little website to look up everybody's address. So they have algorithms within their software that have probably been approved by the state and you know, are calculating them correctly. But again, on the platforms I've seen and had access to, I would say it's a high 90s
Okay.
accuracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right,
I'll show
thank
you how to kind of get around that too. So we'll talk
Okay.
about that. Okay. No,
Okay.
these are great questions. Thank you, Cal. All right. So Mary's popping in, admits, and let's just get back to, oops. I want to see that screen. All right. So It'll be quicker than you think, Cal. So again, you want to determine what kind of business will you have? Are you going to be online only? Are you going to be a hybrid store, shipping, throughout the country, throughout the world, or just in Colorado? Are you a service business? So again, services are not taxed. So labor, if you are, let's say you're a mechanic, you have to charge taxes on the parts that you're going to install, but the actual labor to install it is not taxable. So you need to think about how you need to set up your business, or what type of business are you when you configure these items. So again, to Cal's question, so the second thing you want to consider is, how are you going to collect those? Are you going to be on a point of sale? Are you going to use a marketplace? Do you use QuickBooks? And I mention this because a lot of my examples are QuickBooks based, because that's what I use for my clients. But kind of the underlying question there is, are you going to be doing some kind of a quote thing? So let's say you are a landscaper and you've been called out to a client, and they want a quote from you on what it's going to cost to replace their sprinkler system or something like that. So you go out, you prepare your quote, you are intervening in that process. It's not like a buy button on a software platform somewhere. You are in the middle of that. So you have the time to look up that client's address and find out what jurisdiction they are, find out what rates you're supposed to be applying, versus a point of sale where somebody might be on your store at 3 o'clock in the morning making a purchase. So think about how you need to be involved in that sale. And then again, to Cal's point or question. So if you have a point of sale system, they are doing the calculation for you. So you have to have a level of trust that they are calculating the correct amount for you. So the things you need to make sure you are configuring correctly are your sales tax nexus points. So one of the questions it's going to ask you is, what states do you need to have this set up for? So obviously you're in Colorado, so you're going to have Colorado set up, because that's your physical location. That's your primary place of business. So you have to have Colorado, whether or not you're shipping or not, because if people come into your store, you have to collect taxes where you are, right? Wherever that buyer takes possession of that item. Then if you are keeping products, you obviously have products up for sale. Some of those products may be taxable, some of them may not be. If you are on like if you sell online courses, if you have a course on Podia, or I'm trying to think of some of the other platforms, that's a service, but it still may be taxable, especially if you are allowing people to download coursework and stuff like that. That may be taxable, but again, I don't know all the rules, so you need to be up on those and configure your software correctly. And then thirdly is your customers. If you've got the ability to set up your clients in your software, government accounts, schools, charities, anybody else that is tax exempt. And we're going to go here in a little bit about if you're selling wholesale to people, what do? You need to make sure those people are configured in your software correctly so that they're not getting taxed. I had a client that just sold a big order to one of their wholesale purchasers and charged him $200 worth of tax that now he has to refund him. So you want to make sure those are configured correctly. But if you are in a business where you manually calculate your sales taxes, the process is a little slower. To me, point of sale is kind of like you're on the back end of the deal. You're trying to fix things or catch up or make sure they went correctly. If you are manually calculating them, if you have that luxury to be involved in the actual sale, it's probably easiest on the back end. But what you're going to do is, let's do an example of the landscaper again. He's going to go out whether they use quotes or not. He's gonna go out and see what the job is gonna take, what kind of equipment he's gonna have to buy. He's gonna look up that client's address in that website to look up the jurisdiction code and the rate. I would make note of that somewhere in your invoice. Some of my clients, if they are brand new businesses, I recommend, and we'll go into this in a little bit too, recommend setting up your sales tax, configure your sales tax with the jurisdiction codes. And that'll make your life a heck of a lot easier. Although if you're already in business, it's really hard to retrofit that. So you go, you find the address, you calculate the total tax. Now, in some jurisdictions, like we gave the example with the deliveries, some jurisdictions tax it, some jurisdictions don't. Some rules say if you separately state it on the invoice, it's not taxable. Some say they don't care. I believe Denver is one of them that doesn't care. If you tax or if you provide shipping, it's taxable. And then make sure to include the total tax on your receipt or your invoice, and then your accounting software or your, oops, darn it, I keep clicking the button, apologies. If you're doing this manually somehow on spreadsheets or whatever, you want to make sure when you collect that, you put it into, in accounting terms, it's called a liability account, because that's not your money. You owe that to somebody else. So you want to make sure that you have that available to pay when it's time to file and remit your taxes for that jurisdiction. I think I'm seeing a question. Let's see. Oh, Jenny, I keep thinking I got the. Can you see what that question is, please? Oh. Let's see. Oh, how about resale items? Okay. So I'm not sure at what point in the conversation you were asking that question, Anna, but I will just say that for resale items, if you are, let's go back to the slide. If you are selling resale items, so you're selling wholesale basically, obviously your tax is going to be 0, but you're going to have to flag the customer as a tax exempt customer. And then when you file, and we'll go into this, I've got some examples of how you do this. You have to report your sale, but then you get a deduction for the entire sale. So if you sold $500 of equipment to somebody who was going to resell it, you would say, I made a $500 sale, but it was $500 to a reseller. So you have a $0 sales tax filing. And we'll go into that in a little detail because jurisdictions do want you to file $0 returns. So Anna, if I did not answer your question fully, please let me know. Okay, so here's a little math quiz. Oh, good. I just saw your comment come up on it. So here's an example. This is a landscape guy, and he is putting in some sprinklers into a client in the city and county of Denver. Total tax there is 8.81%. The city tax, well, actually in Denver, it would be city and county tax portion of that is 4.81. The rest of it is special districts and the state. So in his point of sale, for instance, he's got a sprinkler, he's got it labeled as taxable. It costs $15. Tax on that item for each item would be $1.32 at 8.81%. Hose, $25. Tax on that would be $2.20 for each unit, whatever that is. Installation of the sprinkler is not taxable. That's $50 charge. Now, I threw this one in here just to, I don't know, be provocative, I guess. There is a fee that was instituted last year that caused a big kerfuffle within the state. It's called a retail delivery fee. For every order for every sale that you make that is delivered via a motor vehicle within the state of Colorado, you have to charge 27 cents. Legislation was just passed last week where they have capped it now for small retailers. If you have less than $500,000 in sales within a year, you are exempt from that. But if you are over that cap, if you are not exempt, it's up to you whether you want to charge that RDFD to your customer. It used to be something that had to be separately stated on your invoice. In fact, if you've been ordering on Amazon recently or even Shopify, you'll see there's a little 27-cent charge there. But the new legislation says that you can pay that for your customer. So, my question here is, and I'm going to ask Juan because he's the one in the room. In this example, Juan, if I were going to, let's see, if I were going to file my taxes in Denver, what would I calculate as my gross sale amount? Because that's one of the pieces of information you need to have to report. Well, that's a good guess. That's a good guess, and let me tell you why. If you report $100, these four items would constitute a $100 gross sale. But what's the best way to say this? This is so confusing. I threw this in here because of the delivery question. If you have separately stated shipping and delivery on your invoice, you can say, I have $90 of gross sale and do not include the shipping in your gross sale. That way you do not need to deduct it. However, if it's included in your fee or your price of your item, you would include it. So chances are you would not, well, obviously you're not going to see the separately stated invoice charge. So it would be just $100 total. But if you have high ticket items, there are some, heavy equipment operators, or if you are a car dealership or whatever, and you're delivering high dollar items, and you are charging, $3,000 to deliver something, that's a lot different to Denver than you sending a $5 card in the mail. They might want you to report that $3,000. If you get audited, I'm just trying to explain the compliance portion of this. The way I would handle this was when I filed for my state paid items, which would be in revenue online, I would claim $90 of gross sales. When I file for my Denver, I would claim $100 in gross sales and pay that tax. Now, again, back to are you relying on a point of sale? Point of sale system probably isn't going to deal with shipping and delivery of those kind of dollar amounts. Most likely you're manually calculating those anyway. So just keep that in mind on how you are going to collect and remit and file these charges. If you're dealing in high ticket items, I would make sure to be in pretty strict compliance on this. So I don't see any questions. Did I confuse everybody? Where's Mud? All right. Good answer, Juan. All right. So what if you don't collect the right amount? So to Kel's question, what do I do? Shopify did it incorrectly. And the only way you're going to know that is that when you're doing your filing reports and you say, oh man, Shopify only collected $500 and I owe $600. Well, you're going to pay that $600 out of your business account. Yeah, let's see, the city that we are operating in will be able to assist us. Let me get back to your question in a moment here. So yeah, if you under collect, you're liable to pay the difference. If you over collect, per the state, I verified with Department of Revenue just today that if you over collect, you should either be refunding your customer, or if you choose not to refund your customer, then you need to remit it. It's not yours to keep. So again, we're talking about scale. If you're talking about a 5-cent refund to your customer, you know, over 12 months, if you are over collecting for a year, that could get to be a chunk of change. You need to remit that, or you need to refund that. Okay, let's see what Clea has to say. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. All right. Oh, where did it go? How can I see this? Well, she's got the clicker for that, so I keep forgetting. On the chat over there, yeah, the 2 new messages.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So if I work for a HVAC company and we do new construction.
Okay,
And so if they forgot something in the warehouse and we have to deliver something, do I have to add on the 27 cents?
it's only a one-time charge, so it's one per order. But again, if you are not 500,000 in sales, you may be exempt, so check that. And I'm not sure, it just was passed, Polis just signed it last week, so I'm not sure when this exemption is going into place. It's probably June or July. But I would say if it's per order and you do, so what you're talking about is like 2 deliveries, basically?
I'm talking like maybe 3-4 deliveries per location per day.
Oh, goodness. That would be something I would call the jurisdiction, your city, and
Okay.
make sure you're in compliance with that one.
Okay.
And again, the new legislation may have some bearing on that. But yeah, I would just double check. I would hate to give you the wrong information. So best to be safe.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, so let's see. Let's do it, please. Okay. The city that we're operating in will be able to assist us with this, or is everything point of sale? Sorry if you addressed this. So I'm not quite sure what your question is. The city won't necessarily be able to assist you with your particular business or your software, how to configure it. They're going to be most helpful in complying with the statutes and the regulations for their jurisdiction. So if you have a follow-up to that, please go ahead and post it and we'll get that answered for you. Or like I say, if you would like, just go to that form and you can post as many questions as you want, and I will email you responses to those. And Mary, if you get a chance, could you repost that link just in case it's too far up the chat? I
Yes,
appreciate
I will.
you. Thank you.
I will. And I have a couple of questions that I just realized that were chatted directly to me.
Oh, okay.
One says, so the state of Colorado is requiring us to get sales tax from other states as well with interstate implication?
The answer to that is only if you have financial nexus. However, Colorado would not be taking the tax money for that. You would be paying the state you have nexus with. So Colorado does not get any tax for that.
Okay. And then another one, in my case with international drop shipping through Spotify, I will not have any storefront or inventory in Colorado or any other state. Only the business entity resides in Colorado. Any considerations you could share to keep in mind regarding this e-commerce setup? Do I have to collect sales tax?
Again, I would refer you to the Department of Revenue on that one, since it's primarily a state issue. You don't really have any other local jurisdiction other than the state. You might have something in whatever your city is, city or county, if you're in an unincorporated area. But I would double check on that. It sounds like mostly a kind of a streaming service. But there are some, streaming services that do have to charge. It's probably more like a use tax is what I'm thinking. But again, I apologize for not having a good answer for you, but I would check with the Department of Revenue.
All right, here's another one. How about digital items like digital art print?
Yes, those would be taxable. Well, what is the question? If they're taxable, again, I don't want to get into whether something is really taxable or not. I would just refer you to, again, the state and your local jurisdiction on whether you need to collect those, but I would say they probably are taxable.
Okay, here's another one. All canceled online orders, the sales tax has to be refunded. Is this correct?
If somebody cancels an order with you, yeah, you would have to refund the entire amount they paid. So if it's an online order, for instance, you may end up eating like a transaction fee from your payment processor. And if you've already paid or remitted sales tax on that, you can try to get a refund from the state if you've already paid it as well. State in the jurisdiction.
Okay, that's all that I have that were directed directly to me.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Let's get back on the horse here. Okay. So again, with sales tax exempt entities, particularly for the question about resale, if you are selling to exempt entities, and also if you are an exempt entity because you are purchasing things for resale, or you're purchasing things, your cost of goods to make something to sell, you need to make sure you are collecting sales tax exemption certificates in case of an audit. If you're claiming that you did not pay sales tax or collect sales tax from a customer, you need to be able to prove that they have an exemption certificate. So it's up to you to keep those up to date. Make sure that if they've expired, most of them have an expiration date, that you have a renewed copy of it if it's an ongoing customer. Same thing when you purchase things tax exempt, you should provide them a copy of your tax exempt certificate, which in Colorado, your sales tax license will serve as that. Okay, so Anna says, how can they tell in the audit that I charge sales tax? And I missed part of that. Let's see if I can do it this way. I found an easy way. Yay. How can they tell in the audit that I charge sales tax? Isn't the amount paid showing as one amount? Oh, if you are in an audit situation, they will ask you for all of your invoices. They will see if you charged or did not charge. So again, if you're using a point of sale system or an online platform, they should be providing reports per order about the sales tax you collected. So isn't the amount paid showing as one amount? So to answer that portion of your question, Anna, I would say it should not be. All righty.
And Teresa, what would you say for what would you recommend of how to collect proof of like a customer's sales tax exemption? Like they just send a photo, or we would need to like literally put that like in a file, or like have separate like location where we keep all of that hard documentation for sales tax exemption?
Yeah, I would just reach out to them and request, a soft copy of it and store it somewhere on your,
Okay.
like QuickBooks, you can put attachments with clients, for instance, you put them in a separate
Okay.
folder somewhere where you have them. And then you need some kind of a mechanism to make sure they're up to date. So you might want to have a spreadsheet with it, or something in your
Okay.
kind of software that says this is the expiration date, so that you need to go back. If you have sales after that point, you need to get an updated copy. So you as the retailer are responsible for that, even though it seems
Okay.
like they should just, say, hey, here's my exemption.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see, what do we have, David? One part of our sales order is the subcontractor installing the product. Does that portion of the sale contribute to the sales tax owed? So the way I'm reading your question, David, is that you are using a third party for installation? Okay, I would say, as long as it's separately stated, that would, well, let me see what you're really asking here. Does that portion of the sale contribute to the sales tax owed? So being that it's a service, it should be separately stated on your invoice as just labor. And that should be non-taxable, but again, I am not the arbiter of compliance, so I would just double check with the location of where your business is, and also the location of the customer that you're at. And it may depend on, you say the product, but if the product, for instance, is a construction product, there might be some other taxes in play here. So again, I would just double check with your jurisdiction, explain to them kind of what service you're providing, or what service the third party is providing, and what kind of products you're installing. So I don't know if that helps. Okay. All right, I think we've got those covered. So I'm doing a time check here. We're at 2 o'clock. We've got 1 more hour, and we've got a whole bunch to cover. So be prepared. The fire hoses are coming. Okay, certificate management. So we already covered the delivery fee. We went through and rearranged all my slides, probably me. Okay, let's get into the filing and remitting. We've kind of been peppering some of this in as we go here. Yes, Anna, it is a lot of information. And so the Alliance Center, who is hosting us today, they are recording this, and Jenny, who is the head of the Alliance Center here, she is taking your emails. In fact, we are collecting attendance, I believe. So anybody who attended should get a copy of the recording at some point. So it will be available at some point. Okay, so this is what I look like. Now, if anybody's ever done sales taxes, they're due on the 20th, and I have clients that I am doing them for right now. So this is me. That's my face. Okay, so let's talking about filing frequency and due dates. So now you've gone through your license, you're in compliance, you know what your jurisdiction codes are, you collected the correct amount. We'll just say you collected the correct amount, and now you need to file it. Now these are common across the jurisdictions. So these filing dates, etc. And I would double check on the amounts. Some jurisdictions may have different amounts for the frequency. But this is pretty standard that if you collect, and this is the amount of sales tax collected, not the gross sales within that jurisdiction, this is by jurisdiction, $15 or less a month, you qualify for an annual filing frequency. Up to, $16 to $300, you qualify as a quarterly, and those are due the 20th of the month following the reporting period. And if you're over $300 or more, you will be reporting and filing monthly. Once you hit that threshold, typically you stay at that threshold. So if you have a really good month, lucky you, you are a monthly reporter. So sometimes you can call the jurisdiction and negotiate that with them, but they typically start you out as quarterly until they kind of see some pay frequency if you have a new account with them. All right, we're going to go into a little bit about how your reports are going to look. So I hope everybody can see this. It's pretty small. This is the sample of a typical sales tax liability report. So as I said before, you're collecting this money, it's going into your bank account, but it's not really yours. So please make sure you've got it accounted for correctly, because you're going to need that to pay your sales tax. And this is primarily for the point of sale and platform using people here. This is typically how Shopify, NetSuite, Avalara, this is how they report taxes. They will report the city of, the state of, the other taxes. They may not break it down to individual RTB or CB or whatever, but it's going to be something similar to this. So when they say they're doing your taxes, they are collecting your sales taxes. Yes, they are. They're going out, they're calculating them to a very high accuracy, but they're going to report it to you in a format, something like this. You're going to see what to pay Adams County. You're going to see what to pay Commerce City. And I'm going to show you why this is really not helpful at all here in a moment. That's a QuickBooks report, yes. So this is, if you're using QuickBooks, this is the standard format. Now, this is your sales tax codes in QuickBooks. So everybody typically sets those up differently unless you have QuickBooks set it up for you, and they'll can it to a certain extent. So you can also add your own sales tax codes. So let me show you. Well, you know what, before we move on, because we're getting into some meaty stuff. Let's go back to some questions. Okay, so yeah, so it's the 20th of the month, unless it falls on a weekend. So for instance, 20th this month is Saturday, so everything is due the 22nd. Okay, what triggers tax due date? When the invoice was issued or when it was paid? That's a great question, Misha. So sales tax collection, filing and remittance is an accrual activity. So if you're familiar with an accounting, there's accrual basis and there is cash basis. Even if your business is a cash basis business, they want your sales tax remitted when that invoice is written. So even if that invoice has not been paid, you are liable for the payment of it. So again, coming back to what your price points are, if you're in heavy equipment, and you're selling $20,000, $30,000 units, and you've got a $5,000 tax bill for somebody and they haven't paid you yet, that can hurt. So yes, Department of Revenue considers this an accrual basis accounting activity. Let's see. So I think, Misha, that was a scary answer, but yes, it's due when the invoice was issued. Okay. Let's move on here. So this is why that report is probably not very helpful for you. If you look on the chart in the green, that's what your sales tax liability report is going to look like. It's going to report the state, the county, the city, etc. But when you file, whether you're filing in Revenue Online or in SUTS, it's going to ask you for that jurisdiction code. So this is really our first opportunity to look and see what a jurisdiction code looks like. So if you look at the Aurora Douglas that's circled, 47 designates the county and 0030 denotes the city. And again, that Colorado DR 1002 1002 is the form that lists all this. It'll give you all of this information. You can see Aurora Arapahoe, so 10 is the code for Arapahoe County, 12 is the code for Adams County, and the city number will change. So, oh, Andre, how many jurisdiction codes are there? There's about 450. There, at one point, there were over 700 of them, and they've pared them down. And they're adding new ones now. So this is kind of a paradigm shift. Oh, sorry, where do you find these codes? If you go, well, you know what, let's hold on to that question and we'll go back and review, because now that we're kind of putting all these components together, we've talked about it, and now it's probably, oh, I know we talked about that, but we'll put it all together cohesively here shortly. So your report's going to show like the green side shows. It's going to show it by jurisdiction. You need to report by the jurisdiction code. So how do we convert that? This is what I use, and when I send out the presentation deck, I'm going to give you a copy of an Excel spreadsheet. Hopefully you have Office. I think it might work in Google Sheets, but I'm not sure. I have not tried it. Actually, I don't know. I don't know pivot tables. This is a pivot table. If you don't know what a pivot table is, they're a very powerful Excel tool. You can take a data set and kind of slice and dice data any way you want to look at it. I would highly recommend, if you don't know how to do it, dig in, go find some YouTube videos or something, because it's you would love it. But I will send you a spreadsheet that is kind of it's not really a tutorial, but you can go in and just play with it and learn how to do a pivot table. But what I do is I take the transaction data from my accounting system. Like I say, in my case, it's sales tax liability report, detail report from QuickBooks. I pull out all of the sales data, including all of the line item data. So if you are a company that everything is taxable, you might just need a line item of just the invoice. You know, it's this invoice on this date. I sold this, paid this much. This is what I have. But chances are you probably at least have 2 or 3 line items on your invoice. I pulled that out, and I'll show you here an example in a moment of how to create this. But when I convert my transaction data into a format like this, you can see now I have the jurisdiction code. I can tell what my gross sale is. So poorly labeled, but in this example, it's the grand total. That's going to be my my gross sale. My resale, I'm going to file that under the exemption for wholesale resale. Sales, labor install is a non-taxable service, so that gets exempted. So you can see my taxable sales is 26,000, etc. So this just makes it so easy to pop it into Revenue Online, or even filling out the SUTS form. And again, we don't have time to really go into this. I would love to. When I was doing this, I was like, oh man, I really want to show how to do this. But that's why I just did the spreadsheet. So hopefully you have some experience with Excel and you can play with it and figure it out yourself. But at the end, you'll have my contact information. You can email me at any time. That's fine. We'll go through it and figure out what will work for you. But my recommendation is to convert. Let's go back to that original. You want to convert this data to this data. And again, that's applicable to revenue online filing. Jolene, I will be sending a template. It's going to be called a pivot table tutorial, I think I called it. And yeah, it's an Excel format, so you will need to have Office to use it. Unless you load it up into Google Sheets, it might work there, I'm not sure, but yes, I will be sending out a template for pivot table along with the base data so that you can kind of replace your data in there and get a feel for how to convert it. All righty. So where are you going to file your taxes? That's the big question. Revenue online, like I say, that's going to be your primary management for your Colorado account number that includes your physical location. Revenue online is going to be where you sign up for your non-physical location. So let's go back to this report. Let's say I'm a monthly frequency filer. This is my sales for last month, and I never sold into jurisdiction 470002 before. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go into revenue online and file or register for a non-physical location for that jurisdiction code. And that's the code you're going to look to find that record. That's the way I could say. I wish I could show you. They don't give you any play data. I can't show you my live business one because my clients wouldn't be happy with me. But once you go in there, you will see when it asks you for non-physical location, that's the number they're talking about, is the 2-digit county code plus the 4-digit city code. You will see them formatted sometimes without the dash. And when they do that, it typically will drop the front 0. So if you're doing Denver, which is that top number, 0100006 is the Denver jurisdiction code. In some places within Revenue Online and or SUTS, you'll see it as just 10006. So. Oops. Okay. So Revenue Online, again, that's where you're going to be managing all of your accounts, but you're also going to file there. And what you're going to file in Revenue Online, or what you can file in Revenue Online, are the Colorado state and state paid city taxes, state paid county taxes, and any of the other special taxes. You can pay those on Revenue Online. You can also pay them on a paper form, which I would not recommend. It's DR 0100. It's basically the paper version of the Revenue Online form. As of when did it come out? I believe it was about 2020. SUTS was installed. And SUTS is a platform that synchronizes with Revenue Online. If you are going to use SUTS, you have to register your non-physical locations in Revenue Online. That will sync over those registered accounts into SUTS. And what that allows you to do is SUTS will not only accept all of the Revenue Online jurisdictions, but it also allows you to submit participating home rule city tax returns. I love it. I highly recommend it. Every other accountant, colleague and friend of mine tell me I'm crazy, but to me, it makes life so much easier. But I do know companies that fight with it. You might love it or you might hate it, but I highly recommend it. In fact, we'll go through quickly if we have time. I have figured out a way to file in both Revenue line and such and make my filing easier for me, because if you recall, I mentioned earlier that jurisdictions do require that you file a $0 return. That $0 return would be either a jurisdiction that you're registered for that you have had 0 sales into, or it is a return where you had sales, but you deducted all the sales from, or you were exempt from all the sales. So for instance, I sold $500 into Denver, but those sales were all to a government entity. So in essence, I had a $0 filing. You have to report it. $0 sales. I had no sales, $0 sales. You have to report it. But SUTS gives you the ability to file all of them for all jurisdictions. Now, I will, for the purpose of transparency, I will say SUTS is kind of buggy. It can be very frustrating at times, and it can trigger some paper trails that you'll start getting nasty grams from home rule cities that you didn't file, etc. So use it at your own peril, I guess is my point. But I do love it. If it fits your business, I highly recommend you use it. See if we have any questions. That was a mouthful. Okay. All right, before we move on, I think we will go back to finding the jurisdiction code. So this is kind of the whole, because I'm down to the resources now and questions. So let's go back and look at how you find these codes again. So I'm gonna stop sharing this. And I'm going to, bear with me one moment. I'm going to try to pull up this. Okay. Let's do this one. Okay, if you didn't get there, this is what the colorado.ttr.services website looks like. So again, this is a one address at a time search tool. So I'm going to put in 18th Street. That's my sample building I use for everything. I don't need the city, I don't need the state, but you'll see here, when it does find it, you can see it geolocates instead of address lookup. So back to that first question we had about how does Shopify or how does Etsy find your sales tax? They are probably using your address code, or your zip code rather, which is a postal construct. Your client might actually be in an unincorporated area, and you won't know that until you come here, and you might be over collecting to the tune of 3 or 4%. So it's really important that you get your information from here. So you can see that it gives you the jurisdiction code, and it also gives you the breakdown. How much is Denver City and County? How much is Colorado? What the RTD and CD tax rates are. Those are typically 1 and 0.1. So whenever you see a 1.1 addition, that's what that is. And then the aggregated rate. You can also use this as, let me close this part of it. You can also use this via the map. So, come on. I want you to close. Well, it's not going to close for me. I'm not going to labor, but you can see on the right-hand side, my little hand is clicking there. So you can see, if you don't know the address of a place, but you know where they're located, let's go see. I like to do stained glass, and I buy my stained glass at the glass place. Well, I'm not gonna do this for too long here. But I can find it here. Let's say I buy it here. I just click on it and it will give you the jurisdiction for that location, even if you don't know the address. And you can also sometimes, let's do, I don't know the address, but I know it's Meow Wolf and it's in Denver. You will find it that way sometimes too. So this is really a powerful tool. The fact that it's just a single query is kind of bothersome. However, if you are a coder, if you know a coder, they do have an API code. And when you register for SUTS, you can get your own API and you can do both lookups on this. So that is one of the tools. What else were we talking about in the questions? Let's see. Okay, we don't have any new questions. If you do have questions, we've got about a half hour left. I'm going to stop sharing this. And see what we have going on. Did we miss anybody at all?
So no, to recap, then like just to make sure like I'm hearing everything correctly.
Mhm.
So okay, so it's tax time or it's however. So this just the sales tax in general is
Right.
just a little tax that they just take for any product or services, depending on what they are, and they collect it, and then that tax has to go to the state. Now for like say, we're in Colorado, but then someone from like New York or San Francisco, like, another state, they make a purchase from us, either online or in store, however. So this sales tax that we're talking about today, this is referring to like this whole new ordeal with the jurisdictions, New
Mhm.
York and San Francisco. That tax, we don't worry about that tax, right? It's only if it's like it's someone that is in Colorado or in one of the counties, or it was shipped to an area in Colorado. Is that right? That I'm hearing that correctly or no?
Yes, and let me rephrase to how I'm hearing your question. So correct me if I'm wrong. So what I think I'm hearing, Kel, is if somebody from another state
Mhm,
purchases something on your website,
mhm,
your business is located in Colorado, and they're delivering it to, or you're delivering it to somebody in Colorado. So let me give an example of a florist. So somebody in Florida wants to send flowers to somebody in Boulder. So they go on a Boulder florist website and it's going to be delivered in Boulder. You would have to worry about that. It doesn't matter who's originating the sale or who pays for the sale. It's who is receiving that item.
Okay. So
So that,
it's
I
the
think the distinction,
receiver.
yeah, so
Okay.
I think the distinction, and maybe that's a really good clarification, is who is the buyer in that situation? The buyer is in Florida, but the recipient is in Boulder. So I would say the buyer and or recipient of the item, whoever takes possession of that item, where they take possession of it.
Okay. So wherever they take possession, if it's in, so as long as it's in Colorado, then that's when we get the sales tax. But say the situation was reversed, and
Okay?
like the person is in Colorado, but they're gonna send it to someone in Florida, then since the receiver is in Florida, then we don't even capture that sales tax. Is that right?
Unless you reach financial nexus in Florida, which
Oh.
which is probably, like I say, that Wayfair versus South Dakota, There's some, general conditions around that, those being 200 transactions and or $100,000 in sales. So if you meet either of those as a nexus point, maybe you're selling $100,000 items and 2 sales into Florida, you hit nexus. So if you hit nexus in that other state, then yes, you would have to put sales tax.
Okay, in that other state, and then you would have to actually pay the other state that
Correct.
sales tax, right? Okay,
Correct, yeah.
and then that's where all the different codes will come in as well. Okay.
Actually, those codes don't matter. Those codes
Oh,
only
they
matter if it's a Colorado sale.
Oh, only if they're for Colorado. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's a spider web.
Yeah.
And on the, I'm gonna share this again really quick, so. On the resources tab. So here. So revenue online, obviously, that is where I was saying you're going to apply for your sales tax license. That's who will issue it. That's where you're going to manage your accounts, your physical and non-physical locations. You can file and remit their sales taxes. Form DR 1002 is the information about all of the different jurisdictions, their exemptions, deductions, and rates. TTR services, that's the one that you look up information, and then the sales tax product vendors articles. If you find that you're
Teresa, we can no longer hear you. Or I can no longer hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear her either.
Okay, thank you. Teresa, I'm not sure if you can hear us. But we can no longer hear you.
Looks like they're working on it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Yes.
Try it again. I think we might have lost you again. So we were able to hear you say, can you hear me now? Oh, I hear you now. Okay, now Lion Center is muted.
All right. Am I getting echo? Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. We've got an IT tech here. Can you hear me now without echo?
Yes, we hear you now without echo.
Mhm.
Nope. Have unmuted me.
Yeah.
I can hear you now just fine.
Oh. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. We had to reconfigure a little bit. Thank you, everybody. All right. So where were we? Okay. I don't know where I cut out, but I was saying that, the resources under the sales tax product vendors, the Avalara, Techstar, those are large sales tax kind of adjuncts you can add to software. I wouldn't add those to my software unless you were a huge enterprise. If you are, you know, somebody with a Etsy or a Shopify shop, that's kind of too robust for you. But it does give good information as to interstate sales and nexus and what the nexus is in different states and how to make sure you're in compliance with them. But just kind of as a guideline, unless you hit 200 transactions and or $100,000 in sales to a state, you know, if you're getting close to that, so you need to have a mechanism that monitors that as well. That's when you want to start checking into that. Or if you have high ticket items, because you could hit that threshold real quick. Oh, 200 transactions or $100,000 in sales annually. Yeah. But now you got me wondering, is that annually or per month? No, that would be annually. Okay, I'm not the compliance queen. We might want to check it out. Okay, let's see, where are we? Do we have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay,
So if we have one jurisdiction that we have to file for the next month, we don't do business in that area. Let's say for the next 2 months, we don't do it in that area, and then the following month we do it in that area. Do we have to file every month for that location, or do you?
yes. So whatever your filing frequency is, when you first get an account, they're going to assume you are filing on a quarterly basis. So even if you have 0 sales into a jurisdiction, and when we're talking jurisdiction here, we're talking both, you know, state paid and home rule, you must file a $0 return.
Every month, even though you don't do business in that jurisdiction?
Yes. Yes. So,
Until when?
well, here's what they say is that you cannot delete an account, and they meaning Department of Revenue on the Revenue Online site. They say that you cannot delete a site. However, there is functionality. I've never used it before. I don't know what the conditions are around that. I would call Department of Revenue. If you haven't had a sale into a jurisdiction for, you know, 8 months to a year, I would double check and see if you can't remove that as a non-physical location.
Okay. Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
Okay, let's see. And I had a question pop in my head while I was answering that one, and I cannot remember it, so I will remember it. Okay, how much are the ballpark fees for filing the sales tax, or as long as you do it online, no fees for filing? Oh, okay. This is a great question. So there are no fees for filing. As long as you do it on time, meaning on or before the 20th or whatever the due date is, you will receive, most jurisdictions have what they call a vendor fee or a service fee. It is a little rebate that you do get to collect. It's the only time they let you keep your money that you collected for sales tax. But they will not charge you for filing. Now, let me caveat that with registration fees in home rule cities. Last year, HB 2232, I believe it was, made it, I don't want to say the word illegal, that's not the right word, but it's just that home rule cities are not supposed to be charging you fees to create an account with them. So if there were a fee, it would be more for having an account versus filing. Does that make sense?
Yes. thank you.
Okay. And just kind of along that line too is if you do find that a a home rule city is saying that you need to pay a license fee, $50, $20, whatever it is. I mean, you can imagine back before this rule was passed last year, if you've got 80 jurisdictions that charge you $20 a year and you're in all of those jurisdictions, that would be a hefty little renewal fee every year. So oh, Mary's just stating, yes, the resources links, those are all a part of the presentation deck. I will be sending those to you, as well as the pivot table template. I will give you that. I will give you a copy of, it's just kind of a workflow of, you know, kind of the decision tree, if you will, of when you add new products or when it's time for you to file, where you need to file them. Oh, that's what I was going to do. This is what fell out of my head. So I alluded to earlier a trick that I use for my clients, and this kind of resolves for me the $0 filing fees, as well as the home rule cities. So what I do, and again, it may or may not fit with your business, but what I do, and I'm going to go back to this, hold on. I'm going to go back to the screen where it shows where it pays what? Where did that one go? Turn it, this one. Okay. So what I do is on Revenue Online, I file for every jurisdiction. So I will have a list like this. I will go through every one of these jurisdictions in Revenue Online, and I will file and I will pay the state, whoops, darn it, the state, the cities and counties that the state pays, and the other taxes that the state pays, and also the $0 filings for those jurisdictions. So Colorado requires you to file even if you have no sales. The other cities that they pay, counties that they pay, they require that you file a $0 filing. So for those jurisdictions, I file in Revenue Online. For the jurisdictions that are in SUTs, meaning the participating home rule cities, I will file just the home rule city line because I don't have a copy of it. SUTs is formatted, and you know what this brings to mind? If you guys, obviously we don't have time for this stuff today and it gets really deep, but if you'd be interested in like how to use Revenue Online, how to use SUTs, how to file out their spreadsheet, all the kind of information. How do I find local jurisdiction deduction codes, etc.? This goes in way, way deep. You can email me. My email is in the deck. So let me know if there's other kinds of courses that you'd be interested in. But what I do for home rule cities only is I file those in SUTs, and 80% of the home rule cities are participating. Now, the nice thing about filing through SUTs is that I don't have to already have an account with a city. So let's say this is the first month that I have sold in Aurora. I can file through SUTs without an Aurora account. And Aurora will figure out, oh, this girl doesn't have an account. We'll take her money though. And then if there's a few months where, oh, she's filed 3 times and she doesn't have an account, then they'll create an account and they will give you your account. So that's also a way you can create an account. Now, I understand there may be some upcoming legislation that tries to change that, because from a workflow perspective on the city, that's kind of, it's kind of laborious. It's a horrible task. And I've seen them create multiple account numbers for a location and then things just get really bad. So I can't say that'll be forever, but that is a benefit to using SUTs for home rule cities. And again, all my locations that I have not had sales in, Then all my local accounts, my home rule accounts, I zero those out as well. Now I've got my $0 covered. I've got my home rules paid. I've got all my state and everything else paid. And I haven't beat myself to death with anything. So if you have questions about how that works, let me know. We've got about 15 minutes left here. Okay.
Teresa, there's,
Uh-huh.
there's a question that was above, in my statement in the chat that you were gonna be sending out the PowerPoint slide deck,
Okay.
from Jill. Can you see that? It's about SUTs.
That's me.
Oh,
I
okay.
to just ask you.
Okay. let me,
I'm-
okay. I'm having
So-
lots of questions about SUTs when trying to submit under account type. Oh, okay.
I mean,
I got it.
specifically, so I live in Louisville, and when I go
Okay.
into SUTs, I now see like a local account and a
Right.
state account. And I'm wondering, like, are those two different? Because, and then Denver says state. So I'm like, am I supposed to be doing something separate in each of those
Got it.
lines? And
Okay.
maybe this is a better for like a full SUTs training question.
Got it. Okay. Well, I mean, we can address that. We do have time. And I just saw somebody say, so you don't show how to fill out the return. I could probably do both of these fairly quickly. Give me a moment. I'm going to stop sharing. Let me find a copy of a SUTS. And I'll show you what she's talking about, everybody, if you have not ever been into SUTs and see what they look like. Let me find one that doesn't have any information in it. Okay. I'm going to share this real quick. So, let's go here. Share. All right, so this is one of my dummy versions. Can everybody see this? So when you file a SUTS return, she was mentioning, and I hate to call you she, I didn't capture your name, I'm sorry. But you'll see there's local. Oh gosh. So this is an example of what I was just saying. There's also a line that says state. So what the state line represents is what revenue online or the DRO 100 look like. It's just that instead of being a form, in fact, you know what? I do have a form. Let me try to find one here and I will show you the difference. Actually, I'm going to go this way. Bear with me one moment, please. Goodness, I am just a poor little PC between being online and sharing. It's grinding to a halt here. Okay, I'm going to show you both the DRO 100, which is similar to the revenue online screen. Okay, it's going to ask you the same information minus this header information. So when you log into revenue online, this is going to be your information with your account numbers, your, physical address, etc. When you fill out one of these, you need this. This is a 3-page form, which it is on revenue online as well. It's a 3-page form. You would have to do one of these 3-page forms for every single jurisdiction you file for. If you file for 20 jurisdictions, you've just filled out 60 pieces of paper. So I highly recommend you use revenue online for this, but this is the information they're going to ask you for. Gross sales of goods and services for this location only. This is going to be your gross sales for that jurisdiction. And you need to determine whether you're going to include that shipping and delivery talked about, if you're going to include that in your gross sales or not. You can't deduct it here. So if it is separately stated on your invoice, I would not include it in my gross sales. And then for the state, you have to manually calculate these on the revenue online form. All you have to do is you put in the gross sale number and you put in, I'm going to stop sharing this now. Let me share this real quick. We're going to go back to, darn it. That's not it. Okay, I don't have enough time to do this justice, so I don't want to confuse everybody, but basically, let's go back here. Basically, it's this form, but it does calculate it for you. So you will see the gross sales, you enter the gross sales amount, and then you will see these questions here. How much do you have in wholesale sales? And if you recall on that one matrix that had the jurisdiction codes, if you format your information like the pivot table showed, then you can just plug in, I had $500 gross sales, $200 of those were wholesale, $300 were out of state, so I have $0 to file on here. It can be that easy. Okay, so I don't want to scare everybody. I want to scare you off this form. However, don't fail. Don't do this paper form. Go on Revenue Online. So that being said, you can do the same thing on the SUTS form by doing this. Let me share this again. So this is basically the same information. Again, you don't need to worry about the header information because it already has it in the system. You're gonna upload this, you're gonna import this to SUTS, and it's going to be within your account. So you don't need the header information, but what this jurisdiction code should look familiar to you. 2-digit county without the dashes in this case. Down here, they do format it somehow so that you don't lose that 0. I'm on the wrong one there. But you can file both the home rule city, which is what this local account type is. So for the person who wanted to know what these state and local means, it's local means it's the home rule city. This is the jurisdiction code for the city. This, if you have an account, will be your account. You'll see a bunch that do not have account numbers. So that client, if it were real, would not have an account, but they can still file for it. Then in column E, you're going to put the gross amount, just like you did on the DRO 100, your gross sale. So let's say I were doing Denver. What it would look like is you would have a duplicate of this line. In fact, let's just do it. Going to copy in. Actually, I could have just overwritten it instead of done this. Okay, fine. So we're going to make this look like it. It would say down here, state. And I'm on 0004 Arvada. That's the only difference. What it tells the system, however, is that read this line for the home rule information and read this line for the state information. Does that make sense? You would put the gross amount. If I was including shipping, I would include it in the gross amount and pay taxes on that. If I were not, I would change the gross amount. So for instance, if 200 of a $500 gross sale was shipping for the state portion of the Arvada jurisdiction, I would do the $300 gross sale. For the city that I know wants to collect taxes on the shipping, I would say $500. So we collect it. So even though it's the same jurisdiction, it's a different gross amount. Then as in the 0400, or I'm sorry, 0100, you're going to see the different exemptions. Now you'll see a difference there are deduction codes up at the top, and you'll see these prefaced with Schedule A and Schedule B. Schedule A means that it is a state line deduction. Okay, so for instance, let's find deduction ID 90 is sales to exempt entities. If you were filing your home rule city on here, it's not going to be the same deduction code. You have to add these codes in and find the deduction ID. And again, I don't have time to really go into this, but I am giving you a copy of the spreadsheet that shows these deduction IDs. You add the column to the spreadsheet. So here, local exempt entities is a deduction ID 7. So I can put my exemptions there for local. I would put it over in column, whatever that was, M, no, I'm sorry, L. No, you guys are probably watching better than me, M. For the state line, I would put the deduction under column M, and for the local, I would put it under the newly added. You have to add these columns to the set spreadsheet. Okay, so Jill, okay. So good, it answered your question. I know it probably brought up 100 more. We could have done an all day on all of this, and I wish we could. That would be fun because I'm a sales tax nerd. But we are running up at 3 o'clock. I don't want to go over. I appreciate everybody's time. Again, I will be sending all this information out in a deck. My email is on there. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If you got a chance, Mary's been posting the link. If you could go to that link and post any other questions you want answered. There's also a survey there to let us know what kind of other workshops you might be interested in. Any other help you need to get. I do thank Jenny and the Alliance Center for hosting us today. This has been wonderful. I'm sorry that I've been so complicated with my technology. And two, I want to make sure that everybody here knows about SCORE. I work with SCORE every day in the morning, and they are the best group of people, Mary included. She's one of our volunteers. If you are starting a business, or if you are growing your business or want to sell your business, you just need help, go to score.org/Denver and you will find a mentor. They are retired executives and other business people within the city that love to help people get their businesses moving. It's at no cost to you, and they will stay with you as long as you need them. So please take advantage of that. And Jenny here at the Alliance, they've got other programs as well. So whatever information you need, I bet you could find it. So again, thank you. And please fill out the form. Let us know how else we can help you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mary, you want to stay on for a second, please? There were so many different businesses represented. That was so interesting. And I felt like I didn't give everybody probably the answers that they were looking for.
Sometimes specialized.
Yeah.
Taxes for online retailers, taxes.
Yeah.
Restaurants.
Yeah, exactly. Because like restaurant delivery, they're taxed. You know, grocery stores, they're taxed. Everybody.
We could do that here. I definitely restaurants.
Yeah,
Who else? Really?
restaurants and
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Oh, here's Mary. Hold on, let me answer her real quick. Hello.
Hi, Teresa.
She clicked off right when I said Mary. No worries. I was just gonna powwow with you, but you know what? We're gonna chat here for a second. I want to make sure that we've got everything covered. Thank you so much for helping me. This was just I would not have been able to do it without you and Janie, for sure, for sure, for sure. But I want to make sure that we, did you see any questions? I didn't even get a chance to go over to the forum. Were there any questions being posted there? Okay, okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, that was good. I was afraid that we weren't going to have time for that. So that ended up good. So, okay. Yeah, so let's debrief tomorrow. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, touching. Yeah. Talk to you later. Bye. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, Juan, you had a question.
I built a website. I am wants to build an online store.
Okay.
I'm trying to decide if it's Etsy and the back end of the store or looking at this. Figure out because she hasn't, you know, how to calculate taxes.
Oh.
This workshop, and I was like, well, I don't know, but if I'm going to continue to set up shops for other people, I better have a good understanding.
A good idea. You'll offer a very valuable service for sure. Well, if you're asking my advice, I would probably stick with a platform. If you can do like plugins that, you know, give a buy now button, because I know Shopify even has that, and it's a really cheap version of Shopify. You can just set up your products. I have a store for a client that's like that. She puts her products in there. So basically she doesn't have a storefront. It's just all buy now buttons and download now buttons for like digital products and stuff. So you might want to look into that. Shopify also, and I didn't get a chance to mention this, Shopify, I don't know if you've seen or if you've had any occasion to see, they have kind of an upgraded sales tax package now. You can stick with the regular Shopify sales tax or pay for this extra one. And what I've heard is that this extra one does hook into this API for Colorado, but they want to charge you extra for it. So what I do with my Shopify clients is actually most of them integrate to QuickBooks. So their orders, they do the Shopify side of it mostly for CRM, and then they integrate with QuickBooks. So are you planning on doing accounting in your web? So it's going to have some kind of integration. You probably have plugins you can do, right? Are you building a WordPress or something, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the main thing is that she is very low skilled.
Oh,
And so, like, the first thing I referred her to was the state's online class on like inventory and
oh, good.
systems, but so I'm trying to figure out if she's actually gonna be able to question us, or if she needs to hire a woman. Hopefully hire you.
Well, I'm trying to kind of get myself out of it. Actually, what I'm doing is I'm building tools to make it simple for people who don't have tech skills. So that's kind of my thing is I'm going to be offering more classes and building tools. So like I do have a bulk lookup tool that I use for my clients. So all I have to do is I copy all the, I've done thousands of addresses at a pop. And it just pops through, and I had to throttle it back down because it was erroring out. So I can query one address every 2 seconds. So I've already got that. So I just haven't said that. But, so, yeah, I would keep it easy if I were you. I would just maybe keep Shopify or something as a back end. That would be probably minor administration for her, especially if she's not tech savvy. I don't want to kill this because I don't, you know what? I'm gonna, I think if we stop the recording at least, right?
Yeah, the chat is gonna be saved.
Oh, the chat will be saved? Okay, so yeah, if you guys wouldn't mind sending me that, that would be awesome.